Hello and welcome to the Love Pod, Let's Get Real About Relationships, a conversation series. I'm your host, Sharlene Halbert, and I'm a relationship and intimacy coach for couples in committed relationships who are aged 40 plus, who want more from their relationships in the good stuff and less of the stuff that feels bad or doesn't work. I've always believed that great things are possible in long-term committed relationships, and that perhaps there is more possible than many couples actually experience. So it's becoming a relationship was probably a bit of a relationship coach was probably a bit of a no-brainer for me. This YouTube channel is to start conversations around what's possible when couples get curious about what's impacting their relationship and their lives, and they have a desire to grow and deepen both themselves and what they have together. You know, so often I find people are ashamed of talking about the state of their relationships, or they do the opposite and they find people who can validate their complaints. Through this series, I hope to bring the conversations more into what's possible, what could be added in, and what do we need to talk about in order to create the kinds of relationships that serve us, our children, and the future. So today I would love to welcome my guest, and I'm going to have fun trying to say her last name. Her name is Bernadett Nagy. Did I get that right, Bernadett? Or you can call her Bernadett Nagy if you prefer, if you have trouble with that pronunciation, because she's obviously has to give people like myself who are not so gifted with those different sounds a chance to say her last name. So Bernadett has a business called ManCoaching, and she helps successful, high-achieving men to create conscious, fulfilling lives that not only look good from the outside, but also feel really good on the inside. She loves to help her clients really become their true selves and to stop sabotaging their joy and peace through helping them to appreciate their past, to enjoy their present, and to create a future that they can be really proud of. And she does that with elements from coactive coaching, NLP, psychology, and spiritual teachings. Bernadett, it's such a privilege and an honor to have you on in a conversation with me today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sharlene, for having me. Hello, everyone.
So I'd love for you to start, just if you could, just tell us a bit about how did you become a life coach? And I'd love to know, as I'm sure some of the listeners would also, how you ended up working with men. I do know from a conversation we've had previously that when you started out, that was not your intention necessarily, but you kind of discovered the passion for this along the way. And then perhaps to tell us a little bit about what is it about you or your past or your journey in life that really makes you the perfect person to be doing what you do.
All right, so I will start at the beginning. I have been always interested in psychology and to find out what makes people happy or why I'm meeting so many people who created a life which looks good, but they feel miserable. I wanted to find out what is behind all of that and how I could create a life which is happy and joyful. And first of all, I started to follow my heart. I thought, okay, that's it. So that made me change a lot of things in my life. I changed countries, jobs, relationships, and I thought if I follow my heart and if I fall in love with things or cities or people or career options, then I will be happy. And I had a very adventurous and let's say a joyful life. However, I always find myself in the circle of not being satisfied with what I'm achieved, how I feel, and I kept on changing, right? Changing things around me, right? Mm-hmm. And then in my 30s, I came to that point where I recognized that pattern, that something is not working well. I'm still not there where I want to be. And then I took 6 months off. I moved to Barcelona and I started to work with a coach. And I wanted to see options how to, or practices, try new practices, how to be happier, how to enjoy my life more, how to create my life better. And through my life coaching experience, I found out, oh, that's something I'm really interested in and I would like to have as a profession, as that has been the driver of my life for myself so far. So I could help people to create their own path as well through life coaching. And so I spent the last 10 years of my life creating new experiences for myself and for others in the self-development field, psychology and spiritual path. That's answering your third question.
Sorry, she never do double-barreled questions for people. It's not very fair, is it? Sorry.
No worries. I'm combining it somehow. And why man? You said it very well that it was not my intention to focus only on men. Actually, I never wanted to have a niche. I was really rejecting this idea that I have to focus on a group of people. However, I find myself in having this mission that to help men to get out of this superhero archetype and to free them from all of the expectations society put on them. And I found this out through my deep conversations in my private life and also with my male clients. And then I also find out that there is not enough help there or options there for men to talk to someone, to get the right support. So that's all in was like a win-win-win for me.
That's beautiful. Tell me, I'd love to know a little bit about what do you, in the work that you've been doing. Oh, actually, I do want to go back to something you said, and so I don't want to forget, because there are possibly people who are not familiar with archetypes, and I know it's something that I work with as well. Can you tell a little bit about that? You said the superhero archetype. Could you break that down for people who are listening to understand what that means and how that impacts men in their lives in general?
Of course. So society educated and families traditionally educated men to embody this strong, powerful superhero. That means that men were taught not to show their emotions, their weaknesses, not to talk about their challenges, not to really connect to their feelings and express their feelings, not to cry, and always show that they are strong and they can do everything by themselves. And they needed to be for so long to be the provider for the family, having that burden, having that thing to carry alone, and also to achieve and to have all these status symbols to be validated by society and by women as well. And I wanted to really break that through and free men from that image, and also to raise awareness in society about that, how unhealthy this is, not only for men, but for all the relationships and the whole society, what we are creating with that base.
Yeah, I love that you talk about that, because I know, I'm from Australia, and I know in Australia, suicide rates amongst men is one of the highest killers. And I heard somewhere that between the ages of, I think it's 18 and 30, suicides for men is extremely high. And then again from 55 to 65, something like that. So there's kind of two brackets of that time. And, Australia is very much a society where what you're describing, that superhero, we perhaps have it in a slightly different way. It's kind of, you've got to be chilled and relaxed and, just go with the flow, but not showing emotions and not talking about those things is really very embedded in the culture, as I know it is in many others. So it's a beautiful thing. I was wondering, do you think that not showing emotions and that needing to provide has a sort of a biological basis? Because I was thinking, I guess, biologically speaking, if we go back, being strong was a matter of survival in a way. How do you think that's changed? That why is it different now that's not necessary, or why that's changed?
Because the circumstances changed, right? Now we especially in let's say in Europe, it's we don't have to fight normally against nature anymore. As men, they don't have to hunt for food. We are there as women as well, doing the same, working together to have the basic needs met, right? As a family, as a couple, as a society. So they don't need anymore to pretend they are strong because they are not in the danger anymore. They feel still in danger, right? Because they have been educated and shown that that's not all right. But today that's not. It's quite the opposite, right? Vulnerability is something what makes men stronger.
Right. Yeah, and I love that, Bernadett. I was just thinking, I often use that image of a tree. The reason that trees can withstand strong winds is because they're flexible. They've got roots in the ground, but they're flexible, and really, having that access to vulnerability and emotional aspect is kind of that thing that keeps us strong in a way. Yeah. It's
and
beautiful.
resilient.
And resilient, exactly. I wonder, so this superhero archetype then for you is one of the most challenging things for men. Are there any other things that you think are particularly big challenges for men in terms of having fulfilling lives and being able to access those other parts of themselves other than just that archetype of the superhero?
I would say everything is connected. The biggest block, I think, is being disconnected from themselves, from nature, and from the people around them. Right? And the base is that not expressing their feelings and who they truly are. And this connection they are missing and craving for, and to be seen and appreciated for who they truly are.
Yeah, and that's a challenging one, I think, for all of us, really, isn't it? Men and women, and I think also what sort of role do you think this the labels that we have for, I guess there's kind of, men are like this, women are like this. I had this lovely woman who sent me a message the other day that her husband had found a video by a comedian who will remain unnamed because I don't want people going and looking at it. But it was basically, a comical video about women. You can never please them. They're never happy, etc., like that. That we have this kind of, this is the way that women are. But women also have that about men. And I just wonder how much of what men are experiencing in their challenges comes from the definition that women place on men and what that expectation is.
I think there is still a lot of men thinking and women confirming that they still need to be, let's say, strong and providing and the provider of the family and be a high achiever. But in the same time, there are more and more women wanting them also to be connected to them and to be intimate and to be caring and kind and loving. right? And that makes man's life even more difficult because they are confused about, okay, who and how shall I be to please women? And because men's main thing is to please women, right?
Yeah.
They want to be liked, they want to be appreciated by women. And they are confused because they want to please, because they want to understand women. And I always say, no, you don't need to understand women. That's not your task. Your task is to be your true self and be connected to yourself and to your heart and act from there, while setting boundaries also to women, right? So so it's not about what women want, because women also often don't know what they want, because
Very
having this, right, this picture of, oh, he should be strong, but he should be loving, but he shouldn't show me negative feelings. Well, this doesn't go together. That's also my personal experience. I have been there, requiring this from men, not to cry, not to show me the negative emotions, but be romantic and joyful and kind. And then I realized that this combination, I mean, it has to come together. We cannot separate these two things.
Right. And that there's you know, the thing about a man being your rock, you know, the rock in the relationship, and finding that strength in themselves is part of that. You know, what you were saying about, you know, discovering who you truly are, and what that looks like includes all aspects of ourselves. And I think it's the same for women, you know, discovering our strengths, discovering where we need support and how to ask for what's needed, and for men to do the same, because often we're not open to, number one, even being clear about what it is that we're asking for, and second of all, not knowing how to give it. And I love what you said about men really just want their partners to be happy, and when they can't make their partner happy, then they just shut down because it's important and it's necessary. Would you agree that that's something that you have found, or is there something different to that you have experienced?
Yes, the number one thing what men want is having a fulfilling relationship.
Yeah,
and a romantic relationship is super important. I would say it's the number one relationship. And therefore they would do everything to please their women, but that's also very often the problem, that they do everything and they leave themselves out of the relationship, and they're putting everyone first or before them, so they are unsatisfied inside, and that brings the resistance in the relationship, right, as well. So they cannot be at that state where they want to be. They cannot connect to their partners if they are themselves are the last one in the row, and they are not providing themselves what they need, or they don't ask their partners to help them, to support them in fulfilling their own needs.
I just love this. I love this, Bernadett, because this is exactly what women express. So women feel exactly the same, but it just looks different, you know. And this is the thing that what you're describing is so beautiful and so true, and it's so true of women as well, who put themselves last, who feel they're doing everything. Often women come to me saying things like, I do everything. I'm the one that takes care of everything. My partner doesn't, support me, doesn't do, the reality is that both parties experience the same thing, but it looks different. And, my whole thing in the way that I work is about helping people see the other person's perspective as well, because sometimes you're fighting for the same thing and you don't even know it. And
That's true.
Yeah, so I love that you've expressed that, because I think it's really important. I think it's really important for women to hear that, because often often women feel like the man is being selfish or doing his own thing, taking care of himself, but that's not the experience that men have. And so I love that you've shared that, because I think it's a really important thing for both men and women to understand about themselves and about each other.
and how important it would be to vulnerably share it with their partner, right?
Exactly.
Their own experience of the relationship and their own struggles, and to create that safe space in the relationship where this is possible to express and to discuss and to find solutions together.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. I love this conversation. You're speaking my language. Because that whole thing about, this has been coming up a lot in conversations that I've been having with people about, being solution focused. It's hard to be solution focused when you're in the fight and flight or freeze response. This idea that, if I am making fun of my partner or criticizing my partner or even just poking at stuff, even sometimes in fun when there's not a the kind of approval of the other person to make fun of that thing, it puts us in flight and fight mode and freeze mode. And so when that happens, the cerebral cortex switches off. So there's no problem solving, there's no ability to be creative or try and solve kind of our own internal issues, let alone the ones that are happening in our relationship. And so that idea of problem solving and finding ways to calm the nervous system so that you can put on a different hat is really, really essential. And, while men are struggling with all of those issues, it feels to me like that's one of the things that makes it difficult for them to then be able to look for, okay, how can I listen differently, or how can I show up in a way that is real for me if you're in constant fight and flight mode.
Yeah, indeed. To learn also to reconnect to their wise adult self. Yeah. Right. I call it, we are in the child mode when we don't feel safe, but we have to just step out of that, calm ourselves or comfort our inner children, right? Yeah. And then come back to the conversation and connect to our partners from that wise adult self.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. So, Bernadett, I'd love to know what's the common trigger or kind of realization that men have that have them come to you, like to suddenly, because I had somebody sharing with me about his partner who there was a lot of trust issues were broken in the relationship, and she was unwilling to, or was unable, I should say, because it's not an unwillingness. Most of us are not unwilling. It's just we don't have the clarity to let go of something that happened in the past, and just constantly lives in attacking. And when he's trying to change, her comments are things like, or have been, because I'm only working with the male partner, and her comment is, well, if I hadn't have done what I did, you wouldn't have changed, like it was a bad thing. And I was listening to Tony Robbins recently, and he was talking about this idea that we only change when there's enough pain, when the pain becomes intolerable, because or either that, or we create a compelling future that we want to step into. And I just wonder, what are the common things? Are there any common things that happen for men that have them go, this has got to end, something's got to shift, and they seek you out?
Yeah, I can very well connect with what you just said, because there a few clients come to me from that pain, living in that pain, which is being in their hamster wheel, right? Being in a job they don't like, overworking, not having time for themselves, being exhausted, not having the relationships they want, feeling lonely. And so they come to me when they are really like at that stage, when they have very often also physical pain already, anxiety or panic attack, or really feeling miserable. And I wish they would have come much earlier, because they keep on being in that hamster wheel for years and years, and they could have get out of that stuckness already before. However, this is their timing.
Well, maybe
Like
they needed to wait till you were ready to see them, right?
Yeah,
Till you were ready to be their coach. You weren't ready 10 years ago.
I really like to raise awareness about that you don't have to wait until you have been through so much suffering, because it's a lot of waste of your precious life. And there is another group of men who recognize that they are stepping into their second part of their life. So they are stressed about their 30th, 40th, 50th, 60th birthday coming up. And they realize that they want to create something much more conscious and meaningful in the second part of their life.
Right. So that compelling future, right?
Yes. And the urge to create something in this given time, right? Because the first part of our life, usually we don't think about that it could end, right? But they are already thinking about, okay, how can I make the most of my life? And they are open to rediscover themselves, and they are open to discover new ways of living their life. And then there's a third group, which is connected to the second one, which realized that they have created everything they wanted, right? They have a successful life, a good looking, a shiny life from the outside, but they are not happy, and they know they should feel happy. They should be satisfied with their life, but they are not. And they come to me to find out why and how to feel good with what they have created, and how to keep on having the drive and the joy for continuing to life and to create new things, and to find their purpose. Because that's after they have everything they used to have on their checklist, and what society told them to achieve, now they want to do something bigger, something which is more connected to them, and which is giving back to society, which is making the world a better place.
That's so beautiful and so important. That idea of contribution is something that's often missing in people's lives, and in fact help us meet all of the needs that we have in lots of ways. That legacy, and I know even for myself that I start to think about that, because I never had children. I always wanted children but never had them. And at some point, I remember talking to a friend of mine. She was she's never been married and didn't have children, and she was writing a book about a community that she'd started living in on an island in Sydney. And I said to her, how fantastic that you're doing that. And she said, well, Sharlene, I never had children. I want to create, I wanted to leave something behind, to have a legacy. And it hit me bang between the eyeballs. I was like, that's exactly right. Like, we all have a desire for that, I think, even if it's really hidden. And often we're so busy, men and women, I think, trying to cope with the daily stuff, or and if you have children, it's about the day-to-day needs of the family and perhaps aging parents and all of those sorts of things. That kind of deeper desire for leaving a legacy it gets lost and shows up. It certainly also shows up for women in that perimenopausal time of sort of 35 plus, where we start examining everything. And men have exactly that similar experience, I think, from what you're saying, that they also have this, well, what's my purpose? What am I leaving behind? That's that beautiful creating that future that you want, and it's not too late by the time you get to 60.
Unless you've worked too late. No, it's never too late. That's my experience. I mean, I have clients in their 50s rediscovering themselves and recreating their life on their own terms, and it's for me, it's a wonderful thing to see and to hear that they have been never as happy in their life as they are today. And I'm reaching to that point to say that's the best, those are the best days of my life because I didn't give up.
Yeah.
It's precious.
That's beautiful. Bernadett, what I would love to know in the work that you've done, what do you think are the biggest hurdles that men have, the biggest things that they have to push through in order to create that kind of life that you're describing, where they, feel fulfilled and satisfied? What are the biggest hurdles for men, either that come to you or that you see when they're not seeking out help? Perhaps you have some experience of that as well. What do you think most of those or some of those things might be? Because it's a good thing to, I think labeling that stuff helps men who are listening to this to go, oh yeah, that would be hard for me to handle, because often, noticing what it is that stops you is the first step, I think. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you think about that.
I think there are fears and limiting beliefs behind all that. And you mentioned already not daring to ask for help or support, or not feeling that they are allowed to do that. Then believing that, or not believing that they are good enough to create that life that they want, or that this is possible, to change their life. Or sometimes they are afraid that they will be judged by society, by family, by friends for making changes. Or they are afraid they are not in control of those changes, which is very interesting, because of course they are in control. They don't have to make huge changes. They have to just, especially that's how I work with my clients, just seeing step by step and testing the changes they need to make to feel better, to create the life they want. It's sometimes they are only little things. They are just, mystifying this new life. Sometimes it's the everyday habits or some limiting beliefs which are in their way, not even the big outside changes they are planning to do.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How I sometimes think about this in terms of business, or another area of our lives that is not so triggering. I know that word gets used a lot. I'm almost hesitant to use it, because I think sometimes even using the word, we get trapped into thinking that if we're triggered, then therefore we can't do anything. But that's another story perhaps. But I think, that there's areas in our lives where you would never expect a massive change in one moment. Like, I don't know, your business is going along and you can see that there's going to be some problems, so you start to anticipate the problems and you make small changes that lead to the big change at the end. And yet there's something about I certainly find this in relationships, people, like you said, men and women, they come when things they wait till everything's really bad, and then they think that in order to fix it, it has to be this massive big thing, when in reality it's like the little small steps that you take. And I think, that personal development is the same. When I look back over my life, it's the small changes that I made that led me to where I am. I've also made some very big ones, a bit like you, like changing countries and, doing all sorts of crazy things. But at the end of the day, you always take yourself with you. So the same person shows up on the other side of the world, unless you look at that. So yeah, it's those small changes. And do you find that challenging to have people understand, or men understand that concept?
If they are afraid of the process, yes. So that's why it's super important for me to create a safe space for them, where they also know that they are in control, right? They don't have to please me, and I don't have to approve anything in their life, and not only me, no one else. right? It's them who can set up their own requirements. They are the ones who analyze, I mean, with my help, their own needs, and they are in control of the whole process, right? And no one else is there. But if you have created a life, I mean, for 30, 40, 50 years, which came along the expectations of others, it's I would say it needs a process or time and practice to get back to the driver's seat of your life, and to allow yourself to decide for yourself, and show up the way you are and you want to be, right? And I help them to create, to feel safe in their true self, to express everything they want, and to feel safe with the changes they are planning to do. And I also help them to express or to connect with the people around them, so they can have these important conversations about what is going on inside of them and in their development.
That's beautiful. And I know that you work with men in groups, so I imagine that, I've seen it for myself, because I had the opportunity to spend some time with some of the men in your world, and that beautiful community that you're creating so that men can share with each other and feel safe to do that. It's really beautiful what you've created for the men that come into your world.
Thank you, Sharlene. I think it's very important. One thing is important for men to experience, to have a healthy relationship with another woman, with a woman, right? To have experienced that relationship where there is a safe space and they can be vulnerable and open, and they are still not judged, plus appreciated for who they are. But at the same time, it's very important to also to have relationships with men and with a group of men where they show to each other that this is possible. It is still possible to be vulnerable and appreciated by other men and supported by other men as well, because that brotherhood got also lost. Yes. In society, unfortunately, and I think both is equally important. Men's relationship with themselves, with women and men at the same time. We shouldn't neglect any of those.
No, absolutely not. And there's some beautiful work being done, like in men's groups. I know my father's actually part of a men's group. He's 88.
Oh, wonderful.
And there's a movement in Australia. They call it the Men's Shed. Actually, I don't think he's part of that one. I think there's a separate one, but they get together every week. And, when my father had both of his hips replaced, it was the men of his men's group that were bringing him food, helping him out around the property that he was living on at the time, and, chopping down a tree that needed to be cut into wood. It was really, really beautiful. And they do all sorts of stuff. They do, the Men's Shed, I know, does men's stuff together. So they do, like, they make stuff, and they, do things that they all enjoy, that they have in common, building skills, but using that to build their relationships. And I know, in my dad's men's group, they talk about their feelings. It's all about learning to listen to each other, not give advice, and just kind of be there, which is something that I think women traditionally do very well. Although some of those groups, I think, sometimes become a place for us to bash men, or look for support for things that we're doing that might not be working so well. I think that sometimes happens as well. But it's so essential for women to get together, and all the beautiful women's circles that happen. And I love that men have that as well, because I think traditionally they did. They went hunting together. That there was all that sort of the stages of life where a boy gets mentored into manhood, and there's rites of passage and all those things that we've lost over the years.
Yes, and men still come together, right, for having drinks, for watching football, to do sports together. But the question is, do they also talk about real stuff, right? Because very often those conversations stay on the surface.
Yes.
And that's and when men join men's groups, they realize, wow, it could be totally different, and it's so beautiful to go deeper, to be more connected, and to also share stories and recognize that they are not alone with their stories, with their insecurities, with their challenges, that they belong and they don't have to do things alone by themselves. Right, so that's also important to differentiate, to just meet men for fun, or to meet men for fun, other men for fun, but also connect at a different level of seeing the topics, the different topics, and the level of intimacy and depth.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, both things are necessary, right? I mean, we don't want a life that's all about deep and heavy. That's actually what happens in lots of relationships. I find it gets so deep they forget to have fun and bring in some playfulness. But only living a life of playfulness and fun over top doesn't allow for a lot of growth or real, as you said, real connection and really experiencing what it is to be a human being and understanding what makes us happy and looking at some of those limiting beliefs and things that get in the way of us experiencing life in a way that's possible. So, yeah. What do you think? Well, I'd love to hear some of the stories that have inspired you with some of your clients. It'd be great for people watching to kind of be able to connect with, with what happens when you can start to really experience yourself in your true nature and who you really are, and touch on some of those things that are important. Do you have any stories that you could share about clients and things that happen?
I can share some bits and pieces. For me, it's very inspirational when someone dares to look into the mirror. So inspiration starts there for me, when they are taking the courage to see reality, right? Because that's the first step. When we want to create something better or grow, to know, okay, where are we today? So that's the first thing, which is for me amazing, how courageous those men are. And then they come to me also to break through their deepest fears, right? The fears of rejection. And I have many stories about that, how they came over their fears of being rejected by women, for example, from discovering how to change from being a people pleaser to know what they want as a man, and create and stop dating women which are not good for them. Stop dating women which are avoidance, which don't treat them well, and start to attract those women in their life who are open to have real intimacy and healthy relationships. So to see them in that process, for me, is very inspiring. And the other example is I have very many artists in my groups who are creating for themselves. And to do that step from creating for yourself and hiding to open up and share your gifts with the world, or launching their businesses, which are based on purpose and not only to achieve and to make money, but give something better to the world. And to launch businesses, it's another inspiration for me. Or to leave their jobs, their high-level jobs, where they feel like it's a status, they have a status, and to go through that process where they are super scared of what society will tell about them or their stuff, and to go from being a workaholic at a high level job to do their own business, or became a freelancer, and to have a 2-3 days per week profession, which they enjoy every day, and have that time for joyful activities. So that lifestyle change, for me, it's also super inspiring. or creating another level of relationship in a 30 years of marriage, to recreate that commitment to each other and start to build or live a marriage or relationship from their authentic self, and allowing each other to have freedom and joy in their lives, and to co-create that relationship based on their own terms, and not how it used to be and how it traditionally is required. Right? So there are so many different inspirations and changes man goes through while working with me. But for me, there is no difference. All is about really being courageous and doing their best to be in a state of fulfillment, and therefore to be better human beings.
Yeah, because ultimately being a better human being is the part that that's the part that requires that adult to step up, isn't it? To be able to, I love you keep using the word create. It's one of my favorite ones too, creating what it is that you want, and being able to do that with the life that you've already got and the life you've already had, or the relationship you've already got, or the relationship that you've had, what that looks like to be able to create something new from there is really, really powerful.
Yeah, so you have the choice, right, to stay and create in these circumstances, or to change. You have
That's
the
right.
choice.
Yes.
Right? That's very important.
Absolutely. And we often, I think all of us, we kind of all get stuck in various areas of our life in that same way, right? That we feel that we don't, often the choices, if we were to take responsibility for choosing, sometimes there are things that you don't always like the outcomes of the choices that you've got, but you always have a choice. It's that thing that you hear. But so often the making a choice, even if you end up making one that didn't work out, it was not the right one, is way better than staying stuck in something that you feel not that you feel wasn't your choice. There's something
Indeed,
about
and we need to go also through those decisions which we momentarily regret, right? Because we need to experience those difficulties and down periods as well. That's my lesson learned in the past years from my clients as well. That no matter how successful, intelligent, amazing you are, you will always have down periods in your life, and those are there for you to grow. You cannot grow when everything is okay and happy. You need those periods when you struggle a bit to get through and to see where you have to grow and what you have to learn still in your life. And I see life as a learning journey.
Yeah, and the power that there is in how you view those challenges as well. Like most of us view a challenge as awful, difficult, but what you're saying is that when you can see those things as a challenge, it also changes the way you relate to yourself and what's in your life as well. Yeah. It's beautiful.
And you can have more energy, right? If you create a mindset where you see life as a learning path, as a journey, as a journey with challenges which we are here to just solve and process and grow through, then we have the energy to do that. We are in a totally different state.
Definitely. Yes. It's really, really powerful work that you're doing. Tell me if there was one wish that you had for men in their lives, what would it be?
Oh, only one?
All right. You can have 2 or 3 if you want.
That's difficult. That's really difficult. But okay,
you can have 2 or 3, Bernadett. It's fine.
Thank you. I would start with feeling good enough, just the way they are. that's one thing. The other thing is that that they are allowed, that they feel that they are also worthy and allowed to create their life on their own terms, and that they can ask for help. That they feel and they know that they can ask for help without feeling bad about it.
It's beautiful.
Because we are there for them. I mean, everyone is there for them to create a better and more loving and more connected society.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, that was 3 wishes, which is perfect because that's what the genie gives. So you got your 3 wishes.
If they got already the first one, I think that's brilliant.
You can start. You can just take one.
Yes. Yes.
What do you think's been the greatest lesson in the work that you do for you? The greatest lesson you've learned?
That things are not the way we see them. And we have to be careful with our judgments about others' lives, others' faith, and also about our own life, for whom we are creating our life, right? To be careful about who we are considering when we are taking our decisions.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I love that. That's really, 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 really incredibly powerful and insightful. And what would you say has been your greatest reward in the work that you do as we finish up?
I'd say seeing every week or every day when I have a session with my clients, how they are getting better in their life and in their relationships, and what impact they are having on other people. Because one thing is seeing them feeling better, being more powerful, more balanced, healthier, but all this have a ripple effect. They are affecting their family lives, their relationships at their workplace. So there are so many positive changes coming from that one person's work on himself, which is very beautiful to see how quickly and how powerful they can have a much bigger effect than we think.
And that's that shifting from getting your value from those shiny external objects to getting your value for what you contribute and what shifts you make around you in a way. Yeah.
Indeed.
Bernadett, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. This has been an amazing and very, very rich conversation, and I really want to thank you for the work that you're doing. It's just, I know it's kind of fairly new in a way for men to be having the opportunity to really start to dive into this area and to start to build more fulfilling lives and getting in touch with who they really are. And I think we're just still scratching the surface of that. And I think what you've brought to the conversation has been incredibly enriching, and I think super important for women to hear, because you know what you were talking about, the perspective as well. So not only for men to hear it so that they can start to re-examine and have those lives that they want, but also for women to hear that different perspective that sometimes is missing in the way that they view their partners and their fathers and brothers and sons, etc. So thank you for doing what you're doing and for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sharlene. It's my pleasure to be in contact with you and to share our gifts together.
Yes, I love that too. And Bernadett, what I'll do is I'll put your details below, so anyone who wants to contact Bernadett to participate in the beautiful work that she's doing to change the world, because fundamentally we change the world with every single interaction that we have, with every small change that we make. And I truly believe that. And so if you have any interest in having a life that's more fulfilling, and more satisfying, then you'll be able to get in contact with Bernadett by clicking on the links below. Thank you. Take care and live in love,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.